to Coffee with the Chairman, where we speak to members of the Canadian and the Canadian alumni community here in the UAE in order to get their point of view and their outlook. Today, we are joined by Ramzi Ghurani, Managing Partner of Petra Insurance Brokers, and my name is Ruda Bogatoki. I am the Chairman of the Canadian Business Council of Dubai in the Northern Emirates. The chance to talk to Ramzi is a fantastic opportunity for us here. Ramzi is a very prominent pillar of the Canadian community in the UAE and also one of its greatest supporters. Ramzi, thank you for taking time to speak to us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, of course, a lot of us know what you do and what Petra is all about, but for the uninitiated, could you tell our viewers a little bit about what it is that you do and what Petra does?
Sure, no problem. Petra Insurance Brokers is a family business established back in 1966, so we're talking 55 years coming up in May.
Wow.
My father established it before it was even called the UAE.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and back then I think the coin was a Qatar and Dubai dirham, something like that. So some crazy history with us. I took over the business 9 years ago. So we do everything. You name it, we do it. We go from personal insurance, car, medical, travel insurance, to business insurance, business protection, life insurance. All these things that we do under one roof.
That's fantastic. So insurance is always a hot topic here in the UAE, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding it, and also I think a fair bit of a lack of information as well. So from your experience selling insurance here in the UAE, what do you think are the risks that we most often forget to think about? I'm guessing medical, everyone's got covered. Car insurance, they figured it out. What do people forget about?
See, I just took a big sigh, and this is a good question. It's frustrating as well for me because we try and educate as much as possible.
Of course.
So instead of, you said selling insurance, which is true, we are selling, but it's more about advice and recommendations. One of our pillars and our values is clarity. So we provide clarity, and because insurance is so complicated, people don't want to get into the details.
Right.
People don't like reading the fine print.
Of course.
I don't blame them. But the fine print is where the key is in terms of getting protected or not, and that's our job. So we try and educate as much as possible. We aim to educate on the finer details so customers know what they're buying. And sometimes the cheapest thing, most of the time the cheapest thing isn't the best thing, because you'll be paying a lot more if there's a claim, if there's a condition or a clause that's not there.
Right.
So education is a problem. I think also the reputation for being in insurance is a difficult one, because it's known that insurance people are scammers, which
right, of course.
I'd like to say is not the case.
Of course not.
If you have the right insurance advisor with you or the right insurance broker. So from that perspective, that's part of the job of the client, to pick the right person or people to go for.
And of course, the two things are related. People feel that way about the insurance brokerage industry because they would have inevitably not read the fine print associated with their insurance policy. Exactly. So that when they inevitably went through a medical emergency or some really stressful part of their life, they didn't feel like the insurance company and the broker were there to help them.
Exactly.
I think one of the most fascinating parts about Petra is that you guys have been around for 55 years. So you are the second generation of your business.
Correct.
And that is something that a lot of businesses in the UAE are going through at the moment. That transition from the big father of the business, father of the family, transitioning to the son. What advice would you give to somebody who's taking over a business from their father? What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Well, that's a learning process that is currently ongoing. Because there is no start or end, if you will. You can establish a company, but it's a legacy that you're trying to continue, and actually continue from the previous generation. So you want your family to be proud of what you've done,
right?
Especially from my case, my father. I'm sure everybody would think the same way as I do. But also, you want to create your own legacy. So you have to put your fingerprints on the business as well. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is closing a certain way of doing business, which we've had to do. And it's been encouraged from the previous generation to do so, because this is why I'm here, is to create a new way of doing things.
Of course.
So I think the biggest thing is kind of the balance between your own legacy and the previous legacy, if it's a family business,
For sure.
And put yourself in your own shoes 10 years from now, 20 years from now. What do you want people to say about this? And I think that's something to think about. And once you think about it properly, you kind of have a vision, you know?
That's an interesting part. That balance is incredibly hard to achieve.
Yeah, it is.
I know that one of the areas that you focus a lot with Petra is on Petra's work culture and its branding, but not branding in the superficial sense, but in the way the company is reputed in the market.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's starting their own business now, looking to establish that brand and that culture? What was the really key step for you in that process?
Good question. I worked as an employee before for I think it was 10 years before I got into the business.
Wow.
And
okay.
so for me, I got to the bad and the good. I've had my tough bosses, unfair situations, fair situations, successes. So I got to know the nitty-gritty of working in a company.
Right.
So I didn't come in as a business owner. You know, I came in, I worked as an employee for many years at different industries. And I got to learn that. Now, the biggest advice I can give anyone is to be sincere. So if you're a new business owner, you gotta honor your word.
Right.
So for the deadline on Monday, you better meet that deadline.
Right.
If you have a meeting at 2:30, be there at 2:30. If you're going to be late, honor your word and say, I'm going to be late by this. My point is, this starts with the top of the company. And that builds, that's what I'm trying to say is accountability. And once you hold yourself accountable as a business owner or starting a new business, your team will have to do the same. If not, they're not going to be welcome there.
Right.
So it's a question of accountability and what are your values and standards for your company. And that's what we did, because for me, most important thing is customer service. I appreciate customer service for me when I talk to any company in terms of if I'm a client.
Of course.
And that's why our rating right now on Google is 4.9.
Wow, okay.
And that's not, and I'm kind of annoyed it's not 5, but you have some haters out there.
Of course, yeah.
But 4.9 is as close to a 5 as you can get. You know,
for sure.
I'm proud of that, and that's based on service, the service culture that we have, and we try our best to treat our staff as part of the family business.
Of course.
And they're not just employees; they're more than that, and that's very important to have a successful business, in my opinion.
Very interesting. So, of course, 2020, challenging time. Going into 2021. Can't say things are back to normal. It's certainly continuing to be a challenging time. What's your outlook for the rest of this year? Where do you think the opportunities will be, and what would be the best advice we'd give to somebody, who's running their business or running their team at this point in time?
I think, from my perspective, is be blunt.
Okay.
You talk about strategy meetings and all this stuff. It's a lot of gray areas there, and back in the day, you'll be able to get away with gray areas and even not even meeting your objectives.
Right.
Especially the market of Dubai is very volatile.
Yes, of course.
It's extremely volatile, and so now there's no time for that. We all know with the pandemic, everywhere in the world, whether Dubai is doing great or not, I think they're doing a fantastic job here to be as a business owner.
Yeah, of course.
But still, people have left the country, left the city. Numbers and that's a big deal for us, for all our businesses. So the key, in my opinion, is to be blunt and hit the situation head on.
Right.
As to what you want, who are the good people in your company or not. You don't want to have any dead weight.
Right.
Clear up your clutter. Be focused. Now more than ever, every year is challenging. That 2020 was the pandemic, and part of 21 was the pandemic, of course. 2022 could be something else. Actually, most likely there will be something every year. There's a challenge.
You're right, and I think that's the other part of it, which is building resilience into the business. Constantly trimming it.
Sorry, I cut you off, but resilience is part of our values as well. You cannot survive in the UAE without resilience. It goes up and down, and if you're gonna go too high or too low, you won't make it.
That's true. That's the secret of being around for 55 years.
Pretty much.
Ramzi, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Take care.